everybody's had an opportunity to download the workbook that comes with this session. If you haven't, raise your hand and we'll get Sean to put it in the chat window and see if we can go from there. But yeah, while you're waiting, if you want to let me know, how long is your sales cycle? If you have a sales cycle, I know some of you guys are still in startup mode, so you may not have one. But if you do, you can just put that in the chat. 1, if it's less than 1 month, 2, if it's 1 to 3 months, 3, if it's 3 to 6 months, and 4, if it's 6 months or more. So we'd love to see what everybody has to say. I guess I can put in a 4 because ours is 6 months or more.
I'm not in the aircraft sales business. I'm in the aviation fuel business.
Sales business, right?
A100 UL. I'd love to have them buy it every week.
Okay. There you go. That's true. So, I guess you could do, the business to business side of things, the fuel contracts. That probably is a different number than actual fuel sales where they just drive up and fill up. That makes it really short. Less than 1 month. Bill's got a 4. Dana's got a 3 to 6 months. I've got a 4, long sales cycle. I think Gene was on last time. He mentioned, like a 3-year sales cycle. He's actually selling business jets, and so people buy from him once every 3 years. So that would be the super long end of a sales cycle. So anyway, just wanted to find out kind of where people were so that we'd know how long of a sales cycle or how long of a holding pattern we're looking at, and we can kind of tailor the workshop from there. Hey, Stella, good to see you on the beach. And looks like Kimberly's joining us as well. Stella, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted or... Okay, that's cool.
But I have my headphones on.
Okay, cool. Happy to see you.
I said I'm not at the beach anymore. That's just my background.
Oh, that's cool. We can all pretend, right?
That's right.
That's always a wonderful thing. Okay. Great. So moving on, I think we all agree that a sales cycle in the aviation industry especially can be long. And, anywhere longer than a couple of weeks, and people tend to lose your contact information. They tend to be approached by competitors. They tend to have all kinds of crazy things happen to them that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So agenda for today, holding pattern goals, what we don't want, why closing techniques don't work, and how to create urgency without them. Topics and delivery methods for your holding pattern. We've got some worksheets that we're going to work through and assemble your own holding pattern for your product or service, whatever it might be. And we're going to talk about automating and delegating your holding pattern, because we all know that we have way too much to do in the first place, right? So we don't want to be held up by lack of manpower. Okay, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this, your mileage may vary, and everybody's mileage does vary. So these statistics are completely wrong for you. I just don't know which direction they are wrong for you. When you make an approach, and last month we did our prospecting workshop, and I know some of you guys were in on the prospecting workshop. If you weren't, it's recorded. You're welcome to see that as well. But the result of prospecting is an approach, and the result of an approach is one of 3 things, right? A yes, a no, or a not yet. I did a very generous 5% yeses on this. I almost never have somebody say, take my money on our first meeting. That almost never happens. So I think that's closer to a 0.00001 for me. If it's happened maybe once, and that was, only if I'm selling something very, very small, like a workshop or a book or something like that. But if I'm selling consulting services, I almost never get a yes on the first approach. Um, 10% say, no, I'm not interested. And that's a perfectly acceptable response. In fact, that's a great response. Now I know that I don't have to pursue this person and that they are not interested or they're not a good fit for my product or service. The vast majority of approaches end in a not yet. And whether these approaches are done by phone or by Zoom or by, whatever method they are, almost always they're going to say, well, this is great. Let me get with our board, or let me get with my wife, or let me get with, whomever, and, let me propose this, or let me wait until our next budget comes out, or let me wait until the first of the month, or let me wait until my contract runs out with our last provider, or whatever. So if you could put in the chat, do you think these numbers are high, low, or about right? As far as how many yeses do you get, how many no's do you get, and how many not yets do you get? Anna Marie says exactly. Wow, okay. I have never been right before when using statistics, especially in such a diverse industry. Okay. Charles says about right. Very cool. So yeah, feel free to chime in anytime you like. And we've also got a smallish group today. You're welcome to chime in anytime you've got a question. Throw it in the chat, or feel free to speak up. We're all friends here. Okay, so why is it a not yet? There's lots of reasons that things are not yet. It really depends on, as you say, what product or service you have. Thank you, Jacqueline. That's an excellent point. If you're selling an airplane, it's a lot different than if you're selling software, or if you're selling insurance, or whatever the situation is. So, I do recommend, and, Dana says it's difficult to track. I know that it is so hard. What I do recommend is that the more information you have about your ratio of yes, no's, and not yets, the better you can do targeting. But almost all of them are going to be not yets, no matter what you do. And the reasons for that are, simply scheduling, complexity. They're going to want to look at all the alternatives on the market. I actually try to speed that up by telling them who the other aviation marketing companies are in the United States.
Hello.
So they can check them out. I'm going to mute Tyler. I hope you don't mind. Don't be insulted, Tyler. You can unmute yourself when you get back. So I actually help people consider the alternatives. I want people to find the best fit. There are 5 aviation marketing companies in the United States. We are the best of the 5. So, I give people their contact information and tell them to check them out. If I can speed up that process, then let's do it. Scheduling problems, internal approval process, lack of clarity about ROI. This is one that we can do something about because we can provide more information, and we'll talk about how to do that in your holding pattern. They may be perfectly financially qualified and still have cash flow problems. We've experienced this multiple times in our business where we know we've got money coming in, but it's not here yet, so we can't spend it yet. So that's always a problem. And this is my favorite. Their hair is on fire. Almost everybody in business has priorities and other things going on. We are almost never their first priority. People don't have marketing emergencies. So depending on what your product or service is, it may be that it's just kind of naturally a lower priority than other things that are going on. If they've got screaming customers on one side and they've got their marketing process on the other side, they're going to have to take care of those screaming customers first before they can concentrate on us. So that is a thing. If there's any that you know of that aren't here, feel free to throw them in the chat, or if you have a favorite, we'd love to hear what that is. Okay, so if we do this right, if we do a holding pattern correctly, we have someone that we have qualified. We know they have the money, authority, and need to purchase our product or service. We've started a good relationship that everybody feels good about. We are not being pushy. We've invited them to take the next step in our sales process, and we are prepared to keep them engaged indefinitely so that we are following their time frame, not our time frame. And this is the hardest thing. because we want it to be our time frame. We want to speed this up, and we want people to purchase by the end of the month so that we can pay our rent or whatever it is that we're doing, right? But the more people we have in our holding pattern, the more of those are becoming ready to make a purchase at any given time, and the more of them are actually executing transactions with us. So John can tell you, by looking at our timeline, if we're going to have money 8 months from now. So that's how long our holding pattern tends to be. That's what our average sales cycle is. And by looking at how full our holding pattern is and how engaged those people are, we can tell you what our financial situation is going to be 8 months from now with a fairly good degree of certainty. Right, John? I'll put you on the spot if you can talk.
It's difficult, but yeah, you have it about right.
Okay. So that's what you really want to do, is have a full pipeline so you never feel pressured and you never feel like you're pressuring someone else, because they can smell it on you, right? If you are being desperate. Okay, so what we want to avoid is that annoying repetition. And all of us have had this salesperson where they call us every day or every week and say, so are we ready to get started yet with that project? Are we ready to write that check yet? Are we ready to do whatever? Where they're repeating the same question over and over, and they're not offering any new information, but they just keep calling. And, sales managers, if there are any on the phone, please do not make your people do this. Please do not be on them to be making phone calls and follow-ups and things like that if they don't have something new to say. What you want to be on them about is continuing that relationship and adding value to that prospect as we're going through this process, instead of just simply repeating the same question. The other thing we don't want to do is the other option, and that is to either sporadically follow up or not follow up at all. And that is equally annoying to a customer. We had somebody do that to us. It was actually a home show. It wasn't an aviation product, but we happened to lose their contact information. We were all excited about, and this was a generator that was going to hook up to our solar system and everything else in our house. And these were people that had a solution that we hadn't heard about before, and we were really excited to learn more about it. They never followed up with us, and we lost their contact information. We tried to find them again and couldn't, because we didn't know the precise name. And we even went back through the show. It was at a home show. The home show materials, trying to find them, and couldn't find them. So sometimes it happens that somebody's really excited about your product or service, and if you don't follow up, you'll never hear from them again. They'll never hear from you again, and they'll be really annoyed about it, right? So that's the other side of the coin. Okay, so just a question, and you can answer this if you like to in the chat. Have you had any sales training where they promoted what we call closing techniques? And this could be any of the Zig Ziglar programs, any of the, what was his name? They're in your workbook. Elmer was the first name, but anyway, Zig Ziglar, Sandler Sales, any of those types of training programs where they focus on closing techniques. And, some of those closing techniques are like the hard close or the one call close, the alternative close, where you say, we could do this or that, but we're going to do something today, the thermometer close, where you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are we to get you into a new car today? I'm sure even if you haven't had training in any of these things, you probably have heard of them, either when you're buying something yourself or whatever. The Ben Franklin close is where they go to a whiteboard and they draw a line down the middle and they write pros and cons, and then they write those all out for you, very heavy on the pros, and ask you to come up with the cons. Of course, they've been doing this for years, and you're in this situation for the very first time, so you're not going to think of as many cons as they thought of pros, right? the puppy dog clothes. Just take it home for a night or a week or whatever and see how you get along. And if you don't like it, you can always return it. So all of those things are what we call closing techniques. The problem with all of those closing techniques is that they are hugely manipulative. They were designed for a time and place where people go to a showroom and the salesperson is the only source of information that person has about this topic. They're buying a car or a water heater or something that they don't deal with every day, so they don't know everything there is to know about it. The salesperson's job is to not let them leave the room until they make a decision. So if you have taken any kind of sales training where this was the sort of thing that they did, and if this is in your vocabulary and you're in the aviation industry, please just forget all that. Grow amnesia, do whatever you need to do to not do that anymore. A lot of aviation and business to business prospects already know quite a bit by the time they approach you. They've learned a lot on the internet. They are usually not the sole decision maker. They have to confer with other people. So it doesn't matter how much you twist their arm. There's a whole bunch of other arms that need to be twisted, and you're not going to get all of the arms to be twisted into a room. So, it's insulting. It doesn't work. It's awkward for everyone, right?
And even if you do, and they say yes,
Mm-hmm.
and they push it up the line, and the guy says no,
Mm-hmm.
then you just wasted a lot of time and lost a customer.
Right. You've either ended up with a customer who's a bad fit, a reluctant customer whose boss is pissed off at him, or something, a situation that you don't want. So besides the fact, I forgot the best part. A tactic known is a tactic blown. Most of us can see these coming a million miles away because these have been used for 30, 40 years on customers. They're all over the internet, and everybody's heard about them if they haven't seen them themselves. So just don't try anything manipulative. Don't try any magic words or anything along those lines. But the way to make sales or the way to create urgency is to use one or more of these items. And this is on one of the pages of this is actually on page 7 of your workbook. So go ahead and circle one of these that you think you could use, or one of these that you think might be relevant to your organization. You're actually going to be using this in a holding pattern when we get to the point of building that in just a few minutes. So my favorite is the first one. If there is a regulatory deadline like the ADS-B requirement, people sold a lot of avionics because of that deadline, which happened, that was in 2001. Is that right, John?
Oh, I don't recall.
Okay.
Close around there.
Right. Those are always fantastic. If there is a regulatory or a tax or something like that you can latch onto, then it's not something that you're going to be making up or being manipulative about. It's a real fact that they have to deal with, and you're just trying to help them deal with it. Similar to that is the deadline for delivery. So if you want to execute the sale before the end of the year for tax reasons or whatever, we need to start in October, or whatever the situation is. So, there's always some ways that you can do these kinds of things. The consequences of delay, that's also a good one. If you have a sales presentation that is like a demo that shows people how much money they will save in people hours or whatever, and they're going to save $100,000 a month when they use your software as opposed to doing something as a manual process, then that is a really good example of that one, because if every month that they delay, they may be losing $100,000 or taking a risk that they don't need to be taking if you're selling insurance or whatever the situation is.
I actually used that one years ago.
Did you?
Yeah, except it wasn't 100,000 a day. It was $100,000 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Software that was down in a company I was working for.
Mm-hmm.
I told them what they needed to do, and they told me we're losing $100,000 in every hour we're down. I said, well, this is what you have to do. And they didn't want to do it. So they did what everybody else wanted to do and wasted 8 hours while I sat there at the desk and didn't do anything. And then they finally came to me and said, why aren't you doing this? You have to authorize me to go do this.
Right? Exactly. So I guess the inertia is always on the delay, so we do need to have something to create urgency. And one of these probably applies to your business. Any questions or thoughts about any of these, or is anybody having trouble coming up with one that suits their business? And we can talk about you or talk with you about it. Okay. I think we are doing well. Kimberly says she's loving the list. I appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoy these. We spend a lot of time putting them together. So if you pick one of those, just keep it in mind, and we're going to use it in just a few minutes. Okay, next page, we're going to circle 3. So these are other topics in your holding pattern. This is how we build credibility over time. This is how we build trust over time, which is usually the first reason that people don't want to do business with us, is because they don't have enough information. They haven't interacted with us enough. So, choose any 3 that would work for your organization. Anybody have any favorites or anything that they want to talk about, or any examples that I know you guys have probably been in this business as long as John and I have. So some of you guys have been doing this longer, so you probably should be teaching this course. But my favorite, the thing that's doing really well for us now, webinars and events. This webinar is an example. We do a live webinar once a month, and it gives us an opportunity to interact with folks and, show them some examples of the work that we do, and, provide value, and introduce some of our clients to people who are not clients yet, and otherwise. So that's another nice way to build trust, is, those webinars and events. They are a pain in the neck to put together. I have to tell you, scheduling and everything else. So, we do recommend having one that's higher energy, and then, do the rest, or do 2 more that are a little bit lower expense or lower energy on your part. Things like a tip of the week, that's not on the list, but that's one that's very low energy, very low impact, something that just about any company could do. That's kind of a mini version of the how-to guides and tutorials, things like that. You don't necessarily have to do all of these, but doing any 3 of these, I think, is a really good start, because then you're not repeating yourself, and you're not calling that customer every week saying, are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? Okay. Dana, customer testimonials are good for us. That's great. I know you've got lots of customers that love ETT Aviation. Make hay of that, because, that is, I think, probably the most effective method of marketing. And Stella, you might have some thoughts on that, but those happy customer interviews are absolute gold for any company, I think. Stella does those for us. She's interviewing our customers and finding out if they are happy or not, and writing a nice testimonial for us, and we send those out in our holding patterns. So those are great.
Well, if I find that if a company has no testimonials, and they are an equal competitor with someone who has testimonials, 9 times out of 10, the client's going to choose the one who has somebody saying, hey, yeah, these guys are great, or love their work, or whatever it is, over the guy who doesn't have anything.
Exactly.
So it is a good way to kind of, bump you up without doing a whole lot of work to get it.
Exactly. That is absolutely true. All right, moving on. So you've got 1 urgency factor circled, and you've got 3 other topics circled. Just go ahead and write those in on that's page 9 of your workbook. And then we're going to use that in just a couple of seconds. So I'll give you just a minute to do that. Anybody have any questions while we're getting those transferred? I know making you write like with a pen on paper is like really old school, but I found that this really helps the thought process, and also things change in between the circling. And then when I go to write it down, I'm going, you know what? There's another option that is better by the time I get to page 9. So by the end of today, you'll actually have thought this through pretty well and have some pretty good ideas about how to do a great holding pattern. Moving on, page 10, delivery methods. So our favorites right now, of course, webinar, live webinar. That's
you didn't update the page.
I didn't. Thank you, John. I did on my other screen over here. Okay. All right. So we're going to want to use 3 different delivery methods for this. And this is actually on page 10 of your, when somebody only appears in one format, so somebody only from one venue, they're kind of a one-dimensional person. My son, Mickey, when he was really young, we ran into his history teacher at the store, and he was so surprised that his history teacher was at the store. And it's like in that moment, his history teacher became a real person because they broke the venue that person usually appears in. So if you are always showing up on someone's LinkedIn, and then you show up in a postal mail or a postcard or something like that, you become more real or more 3-dimensional to that person because they know you from more than one place. So this is a neat psychological trick to build trust and confidence between you and a prospect, is to show up in more than one way. So, if you're always showing up only online or only on their Facebook Messenger or whatever and things like that, then you're not a real person to them yet. You need to show up in at least one other way. And these are ways to also publish materials in different formats, because some prospects are going to respond really, really well to text. Others will respond really, really well to video. Others will respond only to your voice on the phone. It's bizarre. And there's no predicting demographically or otherwise how that's going to shake out. But if you use, go ahead, John.
Well, let's talk about also the number of times you hit somebody up, because personal experience, I had somebody contact me 4, 5, 6, 7 times, I think, over 2 or 3 or 4 months. And it wasn't because I didn't want the product. I absolutely wanted the product. I just kept getting in the way. I mean, they sent me a postcard once. I saw it, and then it disappeared, and
Your wife cleaned the house. Postcard disappeared.
Anyway, 3 months later, and I don't know how many times they contacted me, I bought an airplane. I bought my first airplane. And then we went to Independence, Kansas to pick up a brand new 172. But had they not called me back, I would have either gone to somebody else or pushed it off even further than it was. I mean, I was ready.
So that was 6, 8 contacts. How many?
I don't know. I really don't remember, because that was a long time ago.
Okay, that's cool. Anyway, you want to show up in more than one way. Anybody have any questions about, or any favorites, or any misgivings, or any thoughts about any of these methods? We're going to talk a little bit more about 2 of them. One of being a package, that's one of our top performers, and also about LinkedIn, which is one of our top performers right now as well. But
I think you need to have website on there too.
Well, you're not.
Maybe you've got telephone and phone call twice, but your website can provide details and such if someone forgets some details that you talked about, or additional details maybe that you didn't yet talk about.
Right. These are outreach methods. So your website can't jump out at somebody,
if it ranks high enough on Google, it can.
That's true. Yes. Search engine optimization should replace that second phone call. Thank you, Stella. I should have you proofread my slides. SEO, I think, is probably an excellent substitute for that one phone call. Good point. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, what we're finding now, especially coming out of this pandemic era, is that, if they're even somewhat interested, if you show up and have an in-person meeting with them, we just find out so much more than you're going to find out by any other means.
Yes, that is absolutely true. In-person visits. John and I, before the pandemic, used to do a road trip on our way to, whenever NBAA was on the East Coast, we would do a road trip to see all of our clients and prospects on the way there. And that was one of our most effective sales activities, even though it took us out of the office for a couple of weeks and it was kind of a long process and not cheap either. It is definitely worth it, to be in somebody's office and have them show you around and just shake their hand and sit there and have them tell you about their problems is just so much better. I agree. Thank you for that. That's an excellent point. Okay, so moving on. This is our ABCI's holding pattern. Yours is going to be different, but I wanted to give you an example of how some of these shake out into a daily, weekly, monthly pattern. So now you've got them written down. You don't have to think about what they're going to be. You can think about what structure you want them to take. So some of these things will happen like on request, when someone requests a consultation with us. And some of you on the line, I'm sure, have experienced this with us. If we have your postal address, or if you're in the United States, we mail you a package. Our infamous blue folder, right, with some contents in it. We also follow you on LinkedIn if we haven't already. Those are two things that happen just kind of automatically. As soon as someone schedules an appointment with us, we do those two things. And those are conditional. That's kind of the entry point into the holding pattern, right? Once that happens, then we have kind of an ongoing pattern of what we call sustainable contacts. So an email newsletter is an example of a sustainable contact. I can write one newsletter and send it to over 2,000 people every Monday. Some number of them are going to open it. Some number of them are never going to open it until 6 months later when we happen to cover a topic they're interested in. Some of them are going to unsubscribe. All of that is fine, but that's their option, not mine. I'm going to keep sending it until they buy or till they die, right? So that's sustainable. It's cheap. I can do it forever. No big deal. Monthly, we do a how-to guide or a tutorial in a live webinar. This is something we've started this year, and it's been really good for us. This is something we really enjoy doing because we meet people and we have a good time making this happen. Quarterly, we do a personal phone call to let people know here's what's happening in the industry. Here's some new software that we have that maybe will address things differently than when we last talked. Here's what's going on. So we do that quarterly. And then annually, we have a networking breakfast at NBAA where we invite selected prospects and all of our clients that happen to be going to NBAA that year. And Dana, to your point, this is an in-person event that we love doing. And sitting across from somebody is, even if it's only for an hour once a year, that just makes all of our interactions throughout the rest of the year that much better. I think we communicate better if we've seen somebody in person than if we've only seen them on Zoom. So that's our pattern. If we move on to page 12, you get to write out your own holding pattern. So this is your turn. You're going to want to have some activities that happen on request, some things that happen weekly, some things that happen monthly, some things that happen quarterly, some things that happen annually. You don't have to fill in every square, but every square that you do fill in is going to improve your sales process. And to Stella's point about the website, I think that's kind of table stakes. Any time people get an email from us, they go to our website because we have links to our website, or they go to our YouTube channel because we have links to our YouTube channel. So a lot of those things are just a delivery method of something that we're already doing. I also like to reuse the heck out of things. So if we create a webinar like this one, we're going to take the recording of this webinar, we're going to put it on YouTube. We're going to take shorts of this webinar, we're going to put them in YouTube Shorts, and we're going to put those on social media. We're going to use those as email marketing. We're going to take questions that people ask us in these webinars, and those are going to become subjects of future webinars. So everything we do, we want to use the heck out of because we want to preserve energy. In a holding pattern, you want to make sure that you're keeping your energy management consistent so that you're not using too much power, and you're managing that to use as little fuel as possible while you're sitting there in the holding pattern, especially if you're low on fuel. You're stuck in a holding pattern. You want to conserve as much fuel as you can. So you want this to be as sustainable as it can be while also being effective. Is everybody comfortable with doing this? Do you feel like there is too much? Do you feel like this is too much work? We'll talk about that in a minute too, but I think this is too much work. But the difference is my competitors also think this is too much work. So, they're not going to do it, but I am. And that makes all the difference for us. All right. Moving on. You can answer in the chat, or you can speak up if you're brave. Is anybody already doing a holding pattern, whether you're calling it that or not? Everybody has a sales process of some kind. Which do you feel is are you able to measure the effectiveness of any of these measures? Do you feel like you have a good handle on which are your best and which are your worst? Jacqueline says it's also good for planning strategy to meet requirements of buyer level of use might be dependent. Okay. Jacqueline, if you want to unmute and say more about that, I'd love to hear what you're thinking. What you can measure often when you're going about this, there is a question that you want to ask. Out of curiosity, we've been talking for months, but which was there a particular piece of content, or was there a particular email or a particular thing I said that brought us to this transaction today, or made you decide to buy right now? And if you do that every time someone makes a purchase from you, you will know which was your most influential. And usually, even every time somebody gets on the phone with me, I ask them, what brought you to us, or what brought you to this conversation today? Is there something that's on fire? Is there something that you saw? And often they will mention, I saw this video where you were talking about brokers, the Brokers 101 video that you had. And it had this particular section. I wanted to ask you about this because it upset me, because we're not able to do that because my manager won't let us. Can you talk to our manager? So there's almost always some reason that they decided to make a decision today. And whether that was something you said in an email, something you said in a video, something you said 6 months ago that they remembered because of something that happened at their work. You want to know what that is, because you want to track as much as you can. And to Dana's point, this is super hard to measure, and it's almost always inaccurate, but more data is always better. Every piece of data is really valuable, because you're spending time and money on these things, and you want to know which of them is getting the best results. If you don't do this, you're kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And that's fine, because some spaghetti will stick, right? But the more measuring you're able to do, and we do measuring by a number of different means. There's LinkedIn itself has analytics. There's also off-site analytics programs that we can use to say, which posts brought us more followers on LinkedIn, which of our stories were the most interacted with, things like that. For email, you can look at your open and click rates. We always shoot for a 20% open and a 3% click, depending on the topic of the email. If you can get that, that's great. Depending on your list and how warm it is and how good your subject lines are, if you're not getting what you think you should be getting, that's a place to focus more attention. When you go to a trade show, you keep track of appointments made before the show. Are you booked solid before you show up at the show? If so, then that's probably a good show for you. If you don't have any appointments and you're just showing up out of the blue, trade shows are so expensive nowadays. I think that's truly gambling. But you can also keep track.
A quick question.
Please. Yes, Bill.
Pick on LinkedIn up there, and I don't. I'm using it, but I don't know much about its analysis. I did something this week that got 1,900 impressions, 500 views, 21 minutes. I don't know how to use those metrics. Are they? I mean, I guess more numbers being better, but what should one expect, or what is one trying to attain? I know the most you can get, but what's good?
Okay. Most of us have businesses that are fairly niche, right? And the nichier we are, the smaller audience is going to be. So somebody that is selling, and I think I gave this example the other day. We had a lady that had a product that was only good for a certain make and model of aircraft, and she only had an audience of 68 people that could possibly use her product. So if she gets 68 views, she's golden, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of us, though, for across the industry and, for my clientele and that kind of thing, and businesses like yours, from what I understand about your company, I would be thrilled with 1,000 impressions and 10 engagements or 10 engagements. So that was a good post that you had, it sounds like. And if you can do that consistently and weekly, there's your metric. It's a solid performer in your holding pattern. It's even more solid if somebody calls you because of, or DMs you more often in LinkedIn. They will DM you or direct message you because of a post that you made. And you can increase that by saying, DM me for more info about this topic. If you're interested, DM me or call me and put your phone number in there. Make it super easy for them to respond. And if you get a call or if you get a DM, then it's automatically successful because most people don't react the first time they see something. It's again that 5% or less that you get.
Thank you. I get uneasy about it because sometimes I feel like much of this social media is just, and the analytics are just numbers driven, and I'm not sure that's telling anybody anything particularly.
Right. That's true. I keep track of, I ask the question, how did you find me? If they say LinkedIn, I'm good. I have had a good, of the last month, I've had maybe 4 come from LinkedIn. So I know it's working for me. I'm posting daily on LinkedIn, and I've had 4 prospects come from it. So is that worth it to me? Yeah, because I batch write. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute as far as batch writing and other things to save time. But yeah, it's absolutely worth it for me. If I get 4 live people who either DM me or call me because of a LinkedIn. Yeah, mail is the hardest because, we can do postal tracking and we can do QR codes, but for the most part, our postal mails are a black hole. We have no idea whether they were received or not unless somebody tells us, I got your blue folder in the mail, and that's great when they do. Has anybody gotten a blue folder from me in the mail on the line? You can type in the chat or, okay, Bill, you have. Good. I'm glad it got there. And anyway, that's fantastic. Okay, Dana did too. That's great. So, you can ask the question if you want, but for the most part, this is the hardest to track. And I like to have some that are really, really trackable and some that are not. That's where we go with that. All right. So then you want to improve or replace your worst performers and double down on your best performers. So if you have a method that is not getting the response that you want, don't spend any more time or energy or money on it. I like to give things 90 days. Give it a good hard shot for 90 days. And if it doesn't do anything for you, then you need to replace it with something else. One of our best performers is our blue folder. And this has, it's just a plain blue folder. These are really versatile. You can use them for proposals and other things and so forth and things like that. But when we use them for our prospecting holding pattern, we put in a sheet of testimonials. These are case studies that Stella wrote for us from our current customers. We put in a shopping checklist. This is what you should be shopping for when you're looking for an aviation marketing company, a catalog, and some other information depending on who the client is. Sometimes we put in notes from our first meeting. We put in sometimes a book when I have them on hand, a book or social media guide for aviation professionals. And that people tell us anyway, that is makes it really credible for them. They often refer to this one in our first meeting if they've had enough time to receive it. So they schedule the meeting. It takes 3 days to get there. Sometimes they've gotten it by the time we meet. Sometimes they haven't, but it works for us because of the timing. And often they will refer to it the first time we meet unprompted. So that tells me that this is doing its job. And this does break that third wall, as you're saying, Bill. Things are not really real on the internet until something jumps through the wall and you're holding it in your hands. Whether that's a postcard or a package or a personal visit. You got to jump through the glass and be in somebody's face, at least on paper, right? Okay, fantastic. Okay. So since this is a lot of work, there are a couple of ways to automate and or delegate this work. Once you know what's working, you know what KPIs you're looking for, you know what you're doing in general, executing that on a regular basis becomes a drag. But you can automate some of that. You can put people into a CRM or customer relationship management tool like HubSpot, Salesforce, MailChimp, Pipedrive, Infusionsoft. You can put it into a social media planner like Meet Edgar, or there's also Hootsuite or a few others. I like to write all of my LinkedIn posts for the week in one sitting. It takes me about 2 hours to write 6 posts and get them scheduled out using Meet Edgar. Some of them I can't, because they're carousels or whatever, and I have to do a little bit of custom work. On Tuesdays, I do carousels, and that's just a thing that I'm in the habit of doing. But most of this work you can automate with one or more of these tools. I still have to write them, but I can write them all at one sitting, schedule them out. It looks like I'm constantly on LinkedIn. I can promise you I am not constantly on LinkedIn, or I would never have time for anything else. John might argue otherwise. I'm always on my phone. But anyway, this is a survey that we did on LinkedIn about your favorite customer relationship management system for aviation marketing professionals. And it looks like HubSpot won. I'm not surprised. They do great marketing. They have great tools. I think if you're a medium to large size company, these two are fantastic, Salesforce and HubSpot. If you are smaller, then Pipedrive, MailChimp, something like that might be a better fit for you. We used Infusionsoft for quite a long time and had really good experience with them. They've been sold to another company. It's now called Keep, K-E-A-P. and I don't have a lot of experience with that. Jacqueline says, I love adding personal details within a response, like an email or a packet. Yeah, that's a part that I left out. I have some stationery with our logo on it, and I handwrite a note and stick that to the front of every one of those blue folders we send out. That was John's idea a million years ago. So those personal details are fantastic. So if you can automate as much as you can and then make those little details where you spend the time. I spend the time on writing, and I let somebody else manage all of the plumbing, right? The repetitive task. Almost anything can be automated nowadays. Anybody have any favorites or any questions about CRMs or other tools that they're using for their pipeline? I know we talked about this a little bit at the end of the last one. I think Michael Duke had some questions, and so that recording has some of that Q&A, which was nice. But we can continue with other people and other questions too. Okay, you can delegate things. I know some people that you can delegate things to. And this group does a fantastic job. We have spent years looking for and hiring and rehiring and rehiring, for a lot of these positions, because we're super picky, and we have them work for us before they'll work for any of our clients. And so if you're having ABCI work with you, you know all these folks, or some of these folks, or most of these folks, depending on what work we're using with you. Dana uses Nutshell. Excellent. That's a good tool as well. I've heard good things about it. Very easy to use. That's a wonderful thing. And that's the thing is with these tools, if you don't use it, it's not worth it. There's a lot of them can be really expensive, and people only use a portion of their capabilities. So a thing that Dana is real familiar with, because they make airline scheduling software that is right-sized for airlines, so that people aren't buying the big programs that they only use a percentage of their capability. So our team can help you with creating materials for your holding pattern. We create those testimonials. We can create posts. We can ghostwrite for you. We can write for your brand. We can do short videos, are really, really effective on LinkedIn. And they're also really effective to put in packages. You can use a QR code that leads to a video. There's a lot of things that we can do for you to save you time, so you can spend your time on your business. We could spend the time on marketing, put them together. You approve them. We put them into your holding pattern using some software that you already have, or that we can suggest for you or configure for you, and go from there. All right. I think Stella is the only one on our team who's still with us. If you're still with us. I think she probably had to teach. She teaches English when she's not writing for us. So, okay. So this is the answer to, this was a lot of work. This is Penn Jillette. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Penn and Teller. They've been at the Rio in Las Vegas for many, 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 many years. In Las Vegas, which is a very disposable town. And the reason that they're able to sell, they are also on cable TV on a bunch of different shows and things like that. The reason that they are able to get so many opportunities is because they're also fantastic marketers. In particular, Penn Jillette is a fantastic marketer. And we met him at a GKIC marketing event, and he was giving a marketing seminar. And this is what he closed with. The secret to magic is that I'm willing to work harder than anybody else thinks is reasonable. I would add to that, willing to work smarter than anybody else thinks is reasonable, because a lot of these things can be delegated and automated nowadays. You can have a fantastic holding pattern without spending all of your time on it. But it is definitely, definitely worth doing. And, that's really where we, I think in the aviation industry, if you're in business to business, large ticket, complex product sales, you can't rely on your charismatic, fabulous salesmanship alone. It does take a holding pattern no matter what you do. Okay, So after the holding pattern, sales, of course, the sales negotiation process, things like that. We do have a workshop, an on-demand workshop for that you're very welcome to take. That's on our website also. Thank you, Stella, for reminding me to refer people to the website. And also resales, recaptures, and referrals. We did a study a few years ago that indicated that most of the money that most of our clients that had been in business for 10 years or more made was based on resales, recaptures, and referrals. It was not based on first-time sales. So this is where the money is. Making those first-time sales is just a means to an end to get your second sale and your third and your fourth and so on. And, keeping people in that holding pattern while their time is expiring, and then they're going to need another airplane from you in 3 years or whatever the situation is. They're always going to have another situation you can help them with, or they're going to refer somebody or whatever. So anyway, that is pretty much where we leave you. I think we've, and of course, if you wanted to work with us, we're really transparent about what we do and for how much money. If you wanted some examples of things that you wanted done, we'd be happy to set that up and give you a more specific proposal for any of your work that you would like to have done with us or by us. We have a 6-month minimum. We like to have long-term relationships with people, but you don't have to, if you decide, we want to do a website and it's only going to take us 3 months to build, you can jump in at Titanium, we'll get your website built, and you don't have to stay there for 6 months. But we do want to go in with the intention of having a long-term relationship with each of our clients. That gives us the opportunity to get to know your business, to watch your holding pattern for some amount of time and see which factors are actually performing well and which are not, and replacing or doubling down on the ones that are working for you and getting that fine-tuned. All right, so I think we've got a few minutes left for Q&A. Actually, we've got about 5 minutes left for Q&A. Anybody have any questions about, of course, working with us, or about a holding pattern, or about anything having to do with sales or marketing?
Well, either you've done a great job or they're smarter and ought to be teaching.
I know. Exactly. Did everybody get your worksheet filled in? Was that helpful? Oh, okay. Kimberly said, when you mentioned traveling around to business meetings, did you set up meetings first? Yes, we absolutely did. We published our route. We told people we're going to, Atlanta on this day, and we're going to be in St. Louis on this day, and we're going to be, in Orlando on that day. We actually reached out to the people in our holding pattern. We looked at, where they were, and we reached out to them and said, hey, we're going to be in your city on this day. Can we have coffee or breakfast or lunch or whatever? And we ate a lot on that trip at really cool restaurants too. So that was really cool. Okay, could a new customer possibly start working with you at the silver level before moving up to a higher level in less than a 6-month time frame? Yes, that is absolutely correct. We ask for 30 days because I need to plan the time of all of those wonderful people that you were looking at on the previous slide. I need to do staffing, so I need 30 days notice to make sure that we're going to have you covered. So we want 30 days notice if you're going to move upwards, downwards, backwards, or sideways. But yes, we can do that. That is absolutely true. Thank you for the question, Charles. Most often people start with one of the larger plans because they have a lot of work to do, which is why they're talking to us in the first place, and then move down. A lot of people also find, especially if they're bootstrapping, that they start at the lower level and then move up. And that's our favorite way to work because they are finding that they can afford us comfortably. They're expanding their business. They're hiring people. They're needing more marketing to fill the capacity they just hired people for and bought equipment for and so on. So that's one of our favorite ways of working with people. I've had people ask me before, do you do ghostwriting and do you tell anybody if we're ghostwriting for you? The answer is absolutely not. You will never find out who we ghostwrite for unless they tell you themselves. Can you give us some examples? No, we can't. We can give you lots of examples of, our own work and work for different brands and things like that. But that is something that we can't do. And yeah, that's a really good place to start. If we want to do an email newsletter as an example, or a printed newsletter, those are coming back into fashion. We didn't talk about that, but the folks that are actually using a printed newsletter in some of our marketing groups are getting really good results from it because so few people do it nowadays. And you breaking that glass, you're getting through the electronics and getting into their mailbox is also a really good thing. So yes, we can do printed newsletters as well. Printing and postage is not included in these costs. Printing and postage is about the only thing that isn't. Great. Jacqueline said it was fun and informative. Thank you very much. I'm glad you thought so. We were a little weird today because John's had surgery on his mouth and he survived the whole event. I'm impressed, but you're still here, John. And we are just right. And we're just about out of time. So if anybody else has any other questions, I will stay on for as long as people are chatting or texting. But otherwise, I want to respect your time. And if you need to be somewhere without being late, feel free to jump off. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Yep.